All right. Sounds familiar. One of the things that have held America together has been the music that we share and love.
Jimmy Carter used music in a way that helped him in his politics, but it had never been done quite that way.
I'd like to dedicate this song to Jimmy Carter.
I want to introduce to you the great Allman Brothers.
Might be old man, I don't know.
He was cool, he enjoyed our music, and he became a friend.
When I first met Jimmy, first thing he did was quote my songs back to me.
Bob Dylan has been one of my best friends, along with Willie Nelson. When Willie Nelson wrote his autobiography, he confessed that he smoked pot in the White House, and he says that his companion was one of the servants at the White House. Actually, was one of my sons.
My thoughts and my prayers for our hostages in Iran are as though they were my own sons and daughters.
The hostage thing, I think, amplified a lot of the fears that people had about him.
With all the odds against him, he still did what he thought was right. That's not a bad pattern for all of us to follow.
Human rights, the right to live like a human, that's something that President Carter tried to make real with his foreign policy.
We now had a president that started to see the world the way we saw it.
His love for music makes sense to me because music is the voice of the heart.
One of the reasons that musicians were drawn to President Carter, he was a man of the earth. For God's sake, he was a peanut farmer.
That was the music of change and dissidence. There was a risk politically to that, and it didn't matter to him.
I think music is the best proof that people have one thing in common, no matter where they live, no matter what language they speak.
After the catastrophe of the 7th of October, the war became another instrument to stay in power.
When people serve for too long, it gets into their head.
The indictment made him dependent on the extreme right in Israel.
He is now captive to their whims.
He put all Israel in turmoil.
Netanyahu is the architect of chaos.
He survived in a state of war. He survived in a state of instability.
It's not a cover-up. He tried to kill the system.
Nobody is above the law.
Wow, that's a look at the new documentary entitled The Bibi Files. The film delves into the corruption charges brought in 2019 against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, featuring exclusively obtained, never-before-seen interrogation footage of Netanyahu, his family, and his closest associates. The documentary also analyzes how Netanyahu's ongoing criminal case may be impacting his decision-making in Israel's military campaigns, like its war against Hamas in Gaza. Joining us now, the film's Academy Award-winning lead producer, Alex Gibney, and Emmy-nominated director and producer, Alexis Bloom. I guess, Alex, first of all, tell us about the interrogation videos and what they reveal, perhaps that people didn't know before.
What they reveal is the face behind the cultivated facade that Netanyahu in particular seems so good at projecting. And what it shows is somebody who's more fearful, more scared, more desperate than he projects in the media. And also it shows his wife, Sarah, his son, Yair, and shows in them and their confrontations with the police a kind of fundamental contempt for the rule of law, which is kind of shocking.
Remind viewers sort of who have perhaps lost track, what's at stake?
Well, I'd say everything's at stake. Netanyahu's predecessor, Prime Minister Olmert, went to jail on corruption charges that were much, much less than Netanyahu's. So this trial is an incredibly important event for Netanyahu, and he's been assiduously trying to avoid testifying. His lawyers have been pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, citing the war, saying, you know, a prime minister can't testify in his own defense during a time of war.
What's important about the film is, and a number of the people that Alexis interviewed when she went to Israel, is that it's his attempt to avoid a legal reckoning that has caused all sorts of damage in the Middle East, and many people in the security establishment argue is prolonging unnecessarily the devastating war in Gaza.
What do you hope this documentary will reveal? Really, no matter what side you're on in this, and perhaps insight for the debates that are taking place.
Well, I hope for the international audience they realize that there's a very robust dissent within Israel. Polls show 60 to 70% of Israelis do not support Netanyahu. And I think it's important for Americans and people around the world to realize that Israel is not Netanyahu and Judaism is not Netanyahu. He is a politician like any other. And if it puts a bit of daylight between him and the country, for the international audience, we would have done our job.
Police department, sir? Yes, the Houston Police Department, Nathan Douglas, people got shot.
3 Klansmen drove down East 9th Street and emptied 2 shotguns at 4 elderly black women standing on a street corner and a 5th black woman a few blocks away.
The women were walking from the clubs and they're walking here. This is how close they were when they were shot.
Racism and bigotry, far from being on the decline, are actually on the rise.
This was an all-black area. We thought this was our safe haven.
Viola Ellison, Leela Evans, Opal Jackson, and Katherine Johnson were shot. Fanny Crumsey was injured from flying glass. All survived the attack, but their battle had just begun.
Unlike 1880, blacks in 1980 are not going to give the Klan a free ride.
These women were fortunate that they lived through this, and they could have sat back and, you know, go back into their life and ignore this, but no, they decided to do something about it.
The women who were shot expressed the dismay of many blacks.
It had been 3 black men shot down 3 white women. They would never rush the jailhouse because they would have been hung before they got there.
Even though these 5 black courageous women were denied justice in the criminal courts, they took it upon themselves to say that won't be the end of the story.
Flight operations on a carrier are notoriously tough. Getting on and off a ship is the definitive skill that sets naval aviators apart from all others. The reason? The runway. On land, pilots have more than 2,000 feet to take off and land. On a carrier, they have just 300.
Naval aviation's pretty unforgiving.
To take off on such a short deck, pilots have to generate extra speed. The solution? A catapult. A cat shot can launch a 60,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 150 miles per hour in just 2 seconds. Taking off from a carrier is hard. Complicating the matter, the flight deck. It doesn't stay still. It heaves and sways with the sea. In the seconds before touchdown, pilots have to make countless small changes to get the aircraft to line up perfectly with the deck. An F-18 typically hits the deck at over 150 miles an hour. To slow down, pilots rely on a system of arresting wires. Catching one is called a trap.
We have 3 wires we can catch. When our hook grabs one of those wires, it feeds out the appropriate amount of cable to stop you before you would go off the end of the landing area.
It takes years to become a naval aviator. The good ones make it look easy.
It looks graceful and it's beautiful. But what you don't see is all the practice and repetition that goes into making that look that way.
Extremely hot, and there's not very little shade. I've just towel and I'm drinking a lot of water.
These tourists aren't alone in suffering from the extreme heat in Athens. Cooling the Greek capital and saving water has become a top priority, especially given that this part of Europe is one of the fastest warming places on Earth. One idea to address this is to tap into the city's ancient Roman aqueduct. That should exploit an unused water resource to create more green spaces.
Oh my goodness. Wow, it's so cramped.
Built nearly 2,000 years ago, Hadrian's aqueduct flows into the heart of Athens. Most of the ancient structure, like this part in the municipality of Helena, lies underground. Christos is showing me inside.
Oh, it's cooler down here.
Ah, okay, here we are, wow.
So this was the main reservoir that was used to filter the water and clean the water.
Where does the water come from?
The Hadrian aqueduct hasn't got an obvious spring where it carry the water to somewhere else. It soaks the water from the ground along its route. And this is important because the more you use the water, then the water returns. You enrich the water resource that we use.
And why is this project important in the larger context?
The Hadrian aqueduct, because it's still functioning, it still carries water that now goes wasted in the sea. When the new non-potable water pipelines start working, we're going to be saving 80,000 cubic meters per year.
Athens is one of Europe's hottest and most densely built cities. In summer, there's a marked heat island effect. The extra water will help to irrigate green spaces like this and bring down temperatures. At the aqueduct's central reservoir, Yorgos tells me the project is also seeking to encourage a change in people's habits, so less water is wasted. Oh wow, it's huge.
The ultimate goal of the project is to create a culture in Athens. We want more green spaces and less waste of potable water for non-potable uses. And this project is just the beginning of a long strategy for that.
A strategy that's already spreading its reach.
There are plans to expand in the other boroughs of Athens that the Hadrian aqueduct runs. But also we have started a collaboration with another 5-6 cities in Europe that combine cultural heritage with water heritage in order to make more green, sustainable and livable cities.
That's it for this episode. See you soon for more Water Matters.
When he goes out and actually deploys to chase something, it looks like a missile launch. I just open up the back door and he jumps out. It's a lot of fun. Piper is the only dog working at this airport, and there's actually only a handful of dogs working at airports around the country. It's a pretty rare thing. I'm Brian Edwards. Piper and I work at the Cherry Capital Airport in Traverse City, Michigan. Piper is a border collie. Piper's prime function here is wildlife control. Primarily, Piper is going to be chasing away large waterfowl like ducks and geese. In the wintertime, it actually chases away the snowy owl, and then in the summertime, it's basically seagulls and crows. Birds can cause a lot of different types of damage. Most bird strikes are with smaller types of birds that might just cause dents, but if the bird is large enough and is ingested into an engine, that can cause a serious failure like the Miracle on the Hudson. Training specifically for us took about a year and a half. So the way that we've trained is that anytime I deploy Piper out of the truck, he doesn't just run away from the truck, he always runs the direction we were traveling. A lot of times I deploy him when the vehicle is moving. So that's just the way that we train. That a lot of times I try to get him to see what it is he's going to chase first. The goggles or the rec specs serve two purposes for him. One, they're UV protectant, so they protect his eyes. And number two, they're safety goggles, basically. It's one of those things that if he wants to go out and work or have fun, then he's got to wear it.
Yes, yeah, good boy. Don't get him, buddy. Don't get him.
Dogs are really useful for wildlife control because, specifically border collies, it's in their blood. Eventually the goal is to train the birds and other animals that they don't want to be here because there's a predator in town, something that's going to keep harassing them all the time. Piper's been with me at the airport for almost 3 years. He's pretty much with me all the time. I don't think Piper sees it as work. I think it's all play to him, which is what we want, right? The best thing personally with Piper, and it's been this way before we started working, he's got a mind of his own. I talk to him like I would talk to anybody else. He's my bro. Does it get any better than that? I get to work with my best friend every day. I'm extremely proud of him. I couldn't ask for anything more.
$2,300 children have been taken from their parents.
Frontline has been following the situation on the border for over a year. Under pressure, President Trump recently said he would keep families together.
But the border is going to be just as tough as it's been.
Correspondent Martin Smith investigates what happens now.
Plenty of confusion both on the border and inside the Beltway.
And what does it mean for those families who are still separated?
I felt dirty as an Indian all my life in residential school.
Look at that. It's all names.
When you're brought up in an institution like the Catholic Church, you have strict rules, and you went with their ethics.
I've been trying to find out what happened at St. Joseph's Mission.
Everything was so secretive.
My dad was born there. How did it happen?
It's not something that you want to open up, it just keeps on damaging.
For decades, there were reports of neglect and children dying or disappearing from this facility.
2 girls drowned. Priests were moved around.
Why are they dying? Did they think we'd be stupid all of our lives, the rest of our lives, and nobody would ever find out these things?
Being sorry for something is just the first step. You have to take action.
We see the impacts in our community every single day.
And we need to continue to hold each other up.
Julian, I ask you to open your heart. Our people are going to stand up.
Your story is someone who was abandoned, but also who abandoned.
You do know what happened with me, right?
I want to know the whole story.
You could play rook f1, but then the rook
pump fakes up to b3.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to highlight that with king on h2 and rook on the second rank to sit. Yeah, rook f2
takes him bishop
blunder.
d5. Takes him bishop d5. Takes him bishop d5.
Wow.
And Gukesh will be the world champion.
Unbelievable. What a blunder. And let's look at
Oh my
Gukesh,
gosh.
how he reacts.
Takes him bishop d5, and with the f pawn, it is winning.
Look at this. Gukesh senses. He sees that. Wait a second. What happened? Bishop on a8. That's why I think wanted to keep his bishop on b7 so that
The
his
worst
bishop has an
square.
open diagonal.
Nowhere on the diagonal would be worse than a8 except h1. He's chosen the worst square. Gukesh can't believe it. This is a historic moment. If he exchanges rooks and exchanges bishops, we will get a handshake and a new world champion. The entire country of India just closed their eyes and turned their backs to the computer because I can't watch this. Gukesh, he is a moment away, one decision away, and look at the patience, Peter. Forcing himself to double check the head nod. You know what the head nod means. It means he sees the path forward. Peter, there is no doubt that he's going to capture this rook. He will not miss this opportunity. Not after this much work. There it is.
Yeah, the nerves. Total collapse by Dingley, and yeah, he captures the bishop, nothing else to be done. But it's a lost pawn endgame.
He put on his best game. He came so close. And king e3 will be played, but king e5 followed by f4 in the event of king d3 is a well-known victory. That's it. Heartbreak and euphoria all rolled into one scene.
And look at this, Gukesh cannot believe. Yeah, he was smiling a little bit. He's trying to push away the smile. But he will be the youngest world champion. Incredible what we are about to witness.
What a moment, Peter. Words can't capture the significance of this moment, and there it is. One dynasty ends and a new one begins. And after weeks of unspeakable hard work, the emotions spill out. I've got butterflies on my skin. How symbolic. Gukesh sets up the pieces like he always does, win or lose.
Finally, stoic Gukesh shows us the emotion he's been bottling up inside. What an incredible result. And look at that. He's so unbelievably thankful to even be able to take part in emotion like this. He's so humble, he's so grateful for this moment, and it really shows.
But these pilots may be among the last to be trained to fly it. After spending a month in the simulator and learning the basic operations of the aircraft, pilots begin flying training missions in the A-10. Captain Lindsay "Mad" Johnson has 5 years of experience flying the A-10. Today, she's training for a new role to be a pilot on an A-10 demo team, where she will highlight the capabilities of the Warthog.
I am about 2 hours shy of 1,200 hours in the A-10 itself. They call it like a crawl, walk, run process. So I did it in the sim multiple times. Then we go out to the airspace for my first time with a floor, not actual floor, but a simulated floor of 5,000 feet AGL. And then I go here, 2,000 feet AGL, 1,000 feet AGL, and then 500 feet AGL until I got through my first certification.
After Johnson completed a few rolls and dives, she moved on to simulating a strafe, which is an attack on enemy ground forces, a technique used in close air support operations.
So when we do close air support, we are egressing, as they say it, from in front of the target area. I'm going out about 2.5 miles away at about 500 feet, and then I'm turning back around this way. And as I'm about just outside of a mile, I'll pop to about 30 degrees nose high, which allows me to get high enough to be able to see there is what would be designated as the friendlies and what would be designated as the enemy on the ground. And then as I visually acquire that out over my canopy rail, I'm then rolling in using both ailerons. My throttles are already in max. I'm rolling in, and then I'm putting basically my nose position down on what we consider to be like a 20-degree wire. So rather than flying straight and level, I'm 20 degrees nose low towards the ground. I learned about the A-10 growing up. I knew I wanted to do something kind of to pay homage to my dad's time in service. I was young when September 11th happened. I was 9, and he deployed 2 months after September 11th happened. That kind of stuck with me, and I knew I wanted to do something that was going to give back to my country as well. While everybody knows us for the gun and its capabilities, a thing that we take most pride in as an A-10 community is protecting the lives of the men and women that are on the ground.
Вот сколько я себя помню, я всегда рисовала.
Наша робота у співавторстві, вона була, власне кажучи, питанням часу. Ми звичайні люди в надзвичайній ситуації. В Україні це війна професійних нападників проти захисників-аматорів. Прилетіли. І що летять? Серед іншого письменників, музикантів, вчителів, художників. Вони мають бути навчені настільки добре, настільки це можливо у цих умовах. По ній коротку очередь. Туду! Туду! Коли вони стирають цих людей, вони стирають Україну. Спротив злу має бути безкомпромісним.
Тримайся, друже, заберемо тебе зараз. Держись, котик. Все будет хорошо, мы тебя вывезем.
Історії, що ми їх розповідаємо через мистецтво, це теж наш спротив.
Самые отвратительные моменты войны будет не лишним просто улыбнуться.
Людей не так, щоб складно налякати, але важко заборонити їм життя. Україна як порцеляна, яку легко розбити та неможливо знищити.
In a 6-1 ruling, the Montana Supreme Court found that a law prohibiting state agencies from analyzing the effects of greenhouse gas emissions is unconstitutional. Montana's constitution includes the right to a clean and healthful environment. 16 youth between the ages of 5 and 22 sued Montana back in 2020, claiming Montana's policies on greenhouse gas emissions contributed to climate change and harmed rights protected under the state constitution. Following a 7-day trial in 2023, Lewis and Clark County District Judge Kathy Seeley ruled in the youth's favor. The state appealed the district court ruling, setting up Wednesday's decision by Montana's highest court. The majority of justices found that the Montana Environmental Policy Act, quote, mandates the state to take a hard look at the environmental consequences of its actions, which the MEPA limitations statutorily precluded agencies from doing, end quote. The majority ruling also affirmed that the youth had the standing to sue. The plaintiffs in Held also sought another requiring the state to develop a plan for greenhouse gas emissions. That request was dismissed by the district court, and the issue was not part of Wednesday's ruling.
Senator Ed Markey rallied in support of protections for warehouse workers today. This morning, Markey stood with labor leaders in front of the Revere Amazon warehouse. He used the rally to push his Warehouse Worker Protection Act. The proposed law would require companies to give written notice about work quotas that could endanger warehouse workers. It would also direct OSHA to create a standard for those workers. Senator Markey believes the bill is essential to protecting warehouse workers' rights.
You cannot beg for your rights. You have to take them. You have to stand up and fight for your rights.
Right now, the Warehouse Worker Protection Act is currently being discussed in a Senate committee.